Oh dear. Hello and welcome to the 5 p.m. Lockdown Beers and Rugby Chat. And today, as you can see, I've been joined by Ryan Nixon. How you doing, sir?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Not bad at all now, but I'm outside of the 09. You're obviously in the 09, or not obviously, but you are in the 09. So first off, thank you for following the rules and getting yourselves down to level 3. How many hours did you queue up to get KFC?
I'm a smart guy, and I will wait a few days before I fulfill my KFC cravings. The one thing I was just hanging out for, though, was a decent coffee, so had a couple of those each morning. KFC can wait until tomorrow or Saturday.
Fabulous. Look, I've got to deliberately put the jersey up there so you could see it, the old Harbour jersey for you. And look at that, he's got the hoodie on. Fabulous. There we go. Unfortunately, Harbour have had to drop out of the Farah Palmer Cup and not back in the NPC yet, but hopefully soon. 30 seconds until we can open the beer. So you've got it cheated by having yours poured already pre-5 o'clock. And look, if we kick off pre-5 o'clock, it's going to be like 12 o'clock. It'd be like 8 p.m. in the morning, just quick beer. So you've got to keep some standards. But then again, some people would say I've not got standards because I've got a Waikato. Your thoughts on the old Waikato draft?
I tend to drink only craft beers these days, so no Waikato for me.
And it's 5 o'clock, so I can open up now and catch up. Craft beers, geez. Well, clearly you've moved up in the world from your what do you call it? On blank now. You Tribe Sports app days, and clearly getting paid way too much nowadays. So that's the problem, that you can, since you can afford your crafty beers. But there you go. See, nice head. Get rid of the gas. Very German style. So, folks, you probably noticed these ones are a bit more relaxed. Some of the stuff we'll have a quick chat about. The All Blacks squad's been announced, as has the Wallabies, and also an interesting one from World Rugby on the limit to the amount of contact training during that piece. Did you see the contact training announcement, Ryan?
I did not. That skipped past me.
So it's a soft sort of guideline at the moment, but they're suggesting 15 minutes of contact training per week, and then 30 minutes of live. What do they call it again? I've gone blank. Live set piece training, and then I think it was 60 minutes maximum of sort of tackle pad training. LB says Box also announced that we did Box yesterday. LB, if you want to check out our comments about the Box squad, that was yesterday. You're so living in the past, where there's so much in the future. Look, I think it's. I mean, you follow NFL, don't you? So I mean, the NFL has had the amount of contact training you're allowed to do maximum for a while now. I think this is rugby sort of slowly catching up.
Yeah, and I think there's been some regulations in the past, particularly in New Zealand at least, where age group players are only allowed a certain amount of game time per week, and this just a flow on from that in terms of protecting players, protecting their safety, protecting the body. When it comes down to it, like that's where World Rugby is going, and we've seen that with the changes in the way the head contact process has been implemented, and this is just a flow on from that in terms of protecting the number one resource in the game, which is players, and making sure that playing rugby is something they can do for a long time rather than having burnout and suffering an injury that could have been avoided.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Afternoon, Con. How are you doing, sir?
Afternoon, guys. How's it going? Good to see you, Ryan.
Good.
Cheers.
Cheers. So what are you boys drinking then? Because actually, Ryan, you mentioned yours was a craft beer. What is your craft beer?
So this is a vanilla milk stout by Panhead,
Nice.
called Necessary Evil. It's going down well.
You need to get that beard a bit more. You're not full hipster there. Milk.
I did give it a trim a couple of days ago.
Colin, what do you want?
Well, I brew a bit of beer, just sort of like hobbyist, but I got this random craft beer one called the Cranberry Poacher, and it's look, I like to sample the odd ones. This is a UK import, and it's fucking brilliant. I just had a sip for the first time, and it tastes like a mixture of delicious ale and Christmas cake. So there you go.
Wow.
But I don't usually drink that. I'm a lager guy, but I like my stouts as well. So yeah, I've just done a plug. It's like they sent it to me, but they didn't. I bought it.
Hashtag ad.
Yeah.
Geez, Ryan, I know there was me accusing you of being a hipster, but clearly, you've been out hipstered here with those.
Out hipstered. That's right.
With that, oh wow, things of Christmas pudding. Geez, wow.
That's great.
Joshua, how do you monitor full contact training minutes by team?
They assume they're not going to police this guideline. It's it's going to be difficult for them to police it, but it probably allows players to kind of put their hand up and go, "Hey, I'm being asked to do 3 sessions during the week of contact training. That's a bit out of order." Yeah,
look, initially they're just trialing it. So Leinster, Leinster, one of the teams from Italy and one of the French teams, I think, are going to be trialing it. So it's not something that's going to be mandatory to start off with, but it's something they're looking at doing for 2023. Yeah, how they police it is going to be interesting on this one. But
do they think that 15 minutes of full contact training is the equivalent of a full game? Because obviously players aren't, when they're in a full game, they're probably, there's obviously stoppages. They're not in contact themselves all the time. They're probably dipping in and out of contact. So it's kind of the training equivalent of a single game is 15 minutes of heavy contact training.
I doubt it. I think what they're doing is saying that you play a game every 7 weeks. Every 7 days. Imagine playing every 7 weeks and getting paid $1 million. That'd be nice. Anyway, no, they play every 7 days, and it will just be they'll have talked to strength and conditioning people as to how much you can take during that time plus recovery, and it comes to this number because they reckon 35 to 40% of injuries are done during training.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Very interesting.
So I think it's a positive move. It's something that's and I tweeted out today about a show I did with Gift from the USA, Gift Time Rugby, where we looked at NFL and what could rugby learn from NFL, because they really have reduced the amount of physicality and made it much more of a skill game than a physical game compared to what it was a long time ago. So it's going to be this is going to be. I was chatting with Boa in our Facebook messenger chat, and it's going to be a culture change for a lot of coaches around this. It's not something that's going to necessarily happen overnight, but it's going to take some time to do. So let's crack on with the start off with the Wallabies one, because I think the All Blacks one will probably give us a lot more to talk about, being sort of based here in New Zealand. But the Wallabies going with a very similar side. The last 2 games, against the Springboks in their squad, just 2 changes there. Rob Leota comes in at number 6, straight into the starting side, and also in 15 we got Reece Hodge replacing Banks at the back there. Ryan, your thoughts on the Wallabies rolling out this team? Is three games on the bounce with this squad, is that going to be a bit too much for them? How do you think they're going to go?
I think it's just a case of it's been working, and Dave Rennie's obviously decided that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Hodge in for Banks, I mean, that's injury enforced, isn't it, with Banks unavailable? And I guess with the change at 6, Lachlan Swinton was in the news last week with his yellow card, and he's sailed close to the wind a few times with his physicality. And I guess this is a reward for Rob Leota, who's obviously impressed their camp. His first test start, and I guess he'll look to replicate that physicality, but hopefully with a little bit more discipline than we've seen from Swinton. Yeah,
look, I mean, up against South Africa, we know that against South Africa over the last weeks, you have got to you've got to front up physically. And I think that's what Swinton was brought in to do, and he did what he did, and then he gets dropped for doing what he does. I think against Argentina, as someone said, you don't need to front up quite the same way, and the card risk isn't really worth it. But Con, do you think that wear and tear will start to take on these guys, or do you think that they'll be all right?
Look, I think this is a my take on this is Australia have got themselves, Australia Rugby and the Australian team have got themselves in a brilliant position for the remainder of the year. I think and that's what they're thinking of. They can, and when New Zealand Rugby is planning, when they have a few wins or a few losses, they probably don't think about their fans. I think Australian Rugby often think, when they have a couple of wins like they've had, we've got the interest of the Australian public. We need to, harness this, and so they do not want to lose 2 games to Argentina, and they certainly do not want to lose this game. So I think they've put a good team out. They need to nail Argentina at least once. I expect that next week could be a bit more of a rest of a team covering some of the rest, but they will want to nail this game. Then they'll be starting to set their eyes out for the end of year tour, and they'll want to go back to back to back to back and basically get a streak for the rest of the year, even if they drop one against Argentina, which they really don't want to do. But I think if they can win this one, that'll be huge for them. So I reckon they're pulling out effectively everything they can do to ensure they get the victory here. I don't think they really believe they're going to win the rugby championship. That ship sailed, but they do not. But Argentina's a banana skin for Australia, just like Australia's banana skin for South Africa. And Australia's banana skin for us. Argentina do very well against Australia, so they won't be taking them lightly. That's my take.
True. Just to remind people as to the rest of the year for the Wallabies, they've got the 2 Argentinian tests. Then they go over to play Japan, Scotland, England, and Wales in the end of year series of games. Japan, you'd obviously expect them to go well against, but and also Scotland, England, and Wales are going to be real tests for them, and probably good ramping up there. So probably a good order of games and ramping up on those ones. I see Ryan nodding away.
Yeah, well, I guess too, like we're pretty spoiled here as All Blacks fans in that you can leave out guys and you've got that depth to replace them and still put out a really strong 23. Australia doesn't have that same depth, and you do risk losing momentum by just resting players for the sake of it. If they win this convincingly, then perhaps in that last game against Argentina, then you could rotate. And obviously the Japan game's one where there's opportunity to probably spell a couple of guys. But yeah, there's the trade-off with rest and rotation is that you lose momentum and then you're back to square one again. So they've built some momentum. They've picked up a couple of really good wins, playing good rugby. So let's keep rolling with it.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at this side and look at that bench. Obviously, James O'Connor's back with that 55 caps. But apart from that, Tom Robinson, 25 tests, is kind of the senior guy there. Everyone else is less than 20 tests. So it is. Dave Rennie's got a very, very green side when you look at the number of test caps they've got. So yeah, there isn't that. So you can't be bringing in players in the same way that we'll see the All Blacks have done or can do with that 20-30 tests experience. Now, Hunter Paisami clearly would have been available. A bit surprised to see him not back in the reckoning somewhere, but it's good to see that he's got some of those options in depth. But it's all very green depth when he's got it. So yeah, not surprised to see pretty much the same side out there. Pete Samu really cements himself as a finisher. I know a lot of people hate that kind of term, but you've seen he hasn't come on to replace Swinton. They brought Lueta straight in, and clearly Pete Samu's got that number 20 jersey is his because that impact off the bench that he brings, which is interesting to see that they've got that sort of role lined up. So yeah, it is a LB looking for Wallabies and All Blacks to lose ×2, just so the Springboks can win the championship. I guess you've got some. You get some long odds for that. I'll tell you that straight away. But interesting to do that one. And Josh says, Ikitau fits better than Paisami right now. Yeah, I think Paisami is kind of the backup to Samu Kerevi at 12 rather than the 13 jersey. And there's also that guy, I've forgotten his name now, from the Waratahs in the 13 jersey as well, who's in
Simone.
No, Simone. was there last year, wasn't he? He's a bit unlucky to have lost out because of the P again. But anyway, I know that Stephen Harrison has got a lot of time for him. So it's nice that they actually are building some depth, but it is, I say, it's all very green depth, and these guys do need to get as many caps under their belt before the 2023 Rugby World Cup. It's not that far away. We're talking 14 tests next year plus the 6 they've got. So it's 20 tests through to the end of the year, to the end of next year. So even your players like Valentini will still be only at 32 tests if he plays every single game, which he can't do. So yeah,
it is funny though. Like 2 weeks ago to the day, the Australian team naming Quade Cooper felt very weak. And green, and then it doesn't take a huge amount, and obviously Reece Hodge bumping up those numbers, but it doesn't take a huge amount to completely change the opinion or what we feel about a team, and that's same for the Australian public. It obviously takes some wins and a couple of key players to step up. But when they named Craig Cooper, I thought, what the I was very surprised about that, because he was named as he was brought in as not injury cover, but even sort of training, sort of almost a training peer or something like that, right? I don't remember the original terminology, but a great game and another one to boot just makes you feel like they've got a key vet in there, and it's pulling the whole team together. It's not just him. I'm not saying Quade Cooper's pulling the whole team together, but it is amazing how what can change in 2 weeks.
It is. Parisi was a player that I was thinking of from the Waratahs. Thank you for that, Joshua. And Joshua also said he was pushing for Cooper early on, so he's feeling happy to be good about that. And yeah, here's Stephen Harris masquerading as New Zealand Sport Radio there when Parisi ran through Reece and Lester Faianuku.
I mean, I thought Quade Cooper coming in would be. I thought, yeah, why not? But sorry, what I mean by that is there was a point when they brought him in, I thought, wow, what have they got to lose? Because Lolosio wasn't going so well, but they've done very well. It proved to be a very fortuitous decision.
Just want to jump back to Jay's comment here before we go on to the All Black squad. What about reducing warm-up times? There's a lot of injuries happen then as well.
Really? I thought that's to stop injuries.
I was going to say, yeah, the warm-ups and the warm-ups pre-game is supposed to be about stopping injuries, not about causing
increasing warm-ups. Yeah. Is that true? Like I haven't played elite sport for a few years, but is that true? Reducing warm-up times create a lot of injuries, or is he talking? Is that a joke that we haven't?
I think that's a bit tongue-in-cheek about our comments about reducing the contact injuries.
Yeah.
But I think there is an element of a lot of players get asked to come back or want to come back with niggles when they've not actually been fully recovered. One of those that's around at the moment is Bowden Barrett. Probably shouldn't be playing, to be honest, because of his calf and the fact that he gave up the kicking piece. So I think you find your injuries during warm-up times are probably because players are trying to come back too quickly or trying to play through injury on that one. I see.
Do you think James O'Connor will be starting at 10 if Craig Cooper didn't feature this year?
If James O'Connor had been fit, Quade Cooper wouldn't have got an opportunity.
But I mean now, because he's on the bench, they've obviously deemed him fit enough. But 2 games ago or 3 games ago, against the All Blacks in the final Bledisloe, I'm sure Australia were desperate to have James O'Connor playing because he's been really good for them in Super Rugby AU. And I'm wondering, it's a good example of what you were saying, Paul. He's on the bench probably to ease him in, or because, well, I would say it's to ease him in because he should be eased in. But I'd imagine if Quade Cooper wasn't there, they might be starting him just because they have to, because they feel they have to, which would increase his chance of repeat injury.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to see how, Dwayne Vermeulen's come straight back into the starting role. He hasn't come back via the bench and hasn't really been as effective, I don't think, in that one. I see some cogs turning there, Ryan. Any thoughts?
I just think, it's the hardest thing for players who've had such a lengthy layoff is can they get through 80 minutes? And even if you plan on saying, well, we'll start O'Connor at 10 and we'll bring someone off the bench after 50 minutes, that kind of plan can all be thrown into chaos by another injury somewhere, and all of a sudden you find he's playing 80, and that's when, if they're not match fit, then that's where that re-injury can occur. So the safest way to bring someone back is via the bench. And now that Cooper's playing well, they've got that luxury of not having to rush a guy back, which I think is probably the point being made more than anything is, Cooper's re-emergence has just given them a little bit of flexibility around how they use O'Connor.
Yeah.
Wow, Thor is so unfit. I don't know why they're playing for 80 minutes. Really, I don't think Tom and Thor
is he?
He's very fit. I think he's fine starting personally.
Well, he's winning scrums at the 79th minute last week, wasn't he?
Yep. I think, and here's the All Black squad. If you just run your eyes down those number of caps there, and then I switch back to the Wallabies one, and you can see there's a few more lower numbers or small numbers there in that side, particularly on the bench. Whereas if you compare that to the All Blacks, sure, you've got Quinton Pyer, Brad Weber, and Ethan Blackadder haven't got that many, but you've still got Patrick Tuipulotu with 39, off the Tuangafasi and Carl there with 22 and 40.
No one cracking the ton though. Where Australia have a couple, don't they?
That's true. Yep.
We do have two Centurions unavailable, of course.
That's true. Yeah, and Bodie's coming up, which is really cool. Sorry, Paul interrupted you. Excuse me.
No, not at all. One of the things I've said is that you look at this side and go, actually, yeah, I'm kind of happy. There's a couple of Quinton Pye's probably the only one there that people will go, okay, he hasn't really, has he demanded his place? But I think he's good enough. When you think that you're missing Sam Whitelock, Aaron Smith, Sam Kane, either Anton Leonard-Brown or Jack Goodhue now, if you think that David Havili owns that 12 jersey, maybe even Sam Cole, Dane Coles. You've got at least four players who are missing from the match day 22 or 23, plus a fifth one there, and still you've got a side where we're not. I don't think there's any worries about any of those positions. I think the depth is really good that they built up.
Richie Mo'unga, another one.
Oh, thank you. That's what I was forgetting. I knew there's what
Absolutely.
I was forgetting.
That's the one that kind of not troubles me, but it is going to create a lack of cohesion for the remaining 6 weeks of games we have. But it is what it is. Not much you can do about it.
Yeah, and look, he's in quarantine in Queensland. He comes out of that on Tuesday. What's been interesting, actually, and talking about the contact training piece that we talked about earlier, is that Sam Kane, they decided him coming out as a lock on a Tuesday. Sorry?
You said Kane? Did you mean Whitelock?
Oh, sorry, Whitelock. Whitelock coming out as a lock on a Tuesday ahead of a Springboks Test match was too soon for him to get up to speed with contact, whereas Richie Mo'unga as a fly half or first 5'8", that was considered enough time. So interesting how for some positions the contact was enough, but for others in a more contact position one, it was considered not enough time. So I thought that was interesting.
It's quite fascinating, actually. You think they get a mini scrum machine in the hotel room or something for him to smash up against or something.
Just push up against the minibar.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is fascinating though, because I'd assume that I just sort of, there might have been videos that the All Blacks have done, but I'd imagine that there'd be some pretty heavy exercise expectations on Richie Mo'unga through this. And I always assumed that some players, like I'm sure the Lions had this situation, they'll be told you need to do 100 burpees a day. The Lions might not have had this. And there'd be some players that they'd go, they'd send the text in and go, yep, done my 100 burpees, but didn't actually do it. I doubt Richie Mo'unga is one of those guys. I think he's pretty solid. But yeah. Hey, John, how's it going?
G'day, fellas.
G'day. It seems like you're on a bit of a delay.
Can you hear me?
Delay connection there, John. I'm afraid, is you.
We can hear you. Yep. That's right.
I just
it's a bit of a
called in
delay
very
connection, mate.
briefly.
What?
I'm on my way to Milford Sound.
Nice.
What? Okay. John, to be honest, the delay is too much. It's not kind of working. So we'll catch you next time.
Yeah. Good. Enjoy the Milford Sound.
Enjoy Milford Sound because it's the delay. Unfortunately, we've also got a satellite connection there for that one.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the back of that, I think it was Dan Hooker, the UFC fighter, who did a 10K run in his hotel room, which is, I mean, that's just incredible.
That's fascinating.
But shows the dedication to his trade, you know. So.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Obviously, I mean, Dan Hooker being obviously that's a one-person kind of sport, a solo sport compared to a team sport, and you wonder. So I think for people who are part of team sports, I know that I enjoy team sports rather than solo sports because I feel I've got to get out there and actually it's kind of an extra motivator to train. Whereas for solo ones, you see. Being a solo sport person, it's you're driving yourself anyway, so you're perhaps not easier, but more used to training by yourself. But I think as a team player, being asked to train by yourself in a hotel room, I think it's probably a bit harder. But
yeah, well, I wonder if they could get some gear in there because obviously, if I'm not sure anaerobic versus aerobic training. I'd imagine that if they get some weights machines in there, that would be, or whatever the All Blacks use in their thing would be quite important. But I don't imagine it's important for Richard Mo'unga to bench press much at all during his training. It's just fitness and whatever else he's doing. But it is really fascinating, the whole COVID and the training thing to a bit.
But we're back to the mini bar, aren't we? Just do the mini bars your weight.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Lay on the bed and just lift the mini bar up. Perfect bench press. Yeah. So Moody, Taylor, Lualala, Retallick and Barrett back in the engine room there. Akira, I guess Artie Surveyor at 7, Luke Jacobson at 8. That's probably one of the discussion points. I think people were expecting, since Papulehi is injured, people were expecting Blackadder in there instead of Luke Jacobson. Thoughts on that, boys?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Blackadder last week was outstanding. But I feel like the loose trio combination isn't really settled on at the moment, and Akira looks like he's the preferred 6. But we saw in the test against Australia, and Artie Savia was at 8, and Dalton Papali'i was at 7, and that looked like it was probably the first choice trio with Kane unavailable. Mm-hmm. But with Papali'i injured, there seems to be a little bit less clarity around who the first choice number 8 is, and that makeup of that loose trio. So Akira back in there. Satudu was outstanding last week at 8.
Yeah, Satudu.
But I think it's a case of just giving everyone their opportunity and looking for someone to stake their claim as the preferred option.
I think Artie Surveyor is the first choice number 8. But the question is, but I think there's a lack of 7s at the moment in New Zealand rugby.
Well, your top 2 are injured, and that's that causes problems. So Savia, Savia is a quality 7 and has been his whole career. But you're right in that he's probably looking at shifting to 8 to maintain that balance of the loose trio with Kane or Papali'i fit. But because they're out, they need another makeup. So it'll be interesting. Jacobson, I don't think was that impressive 2 weeks ago when he started against the Pumas, but he gets another opportunity, and it's up to him now.
Yeah, look, he's someone that's been on the All Blacks radar for a long time, captain for the under-20s, for example, and so he's been someone that's and then the concussion around the Rugby World Cup really sort of put a big handbrake on his career. So he's someone that's that they've got big raps on, and for a long time has been earmarked as an All Black. Interesting to see TJ ahead of Brad Webber in the pecking order as well. And I think there's a couple of pecking order things we've learnt more than anything else in this one. There, and Ryan, we had a chat on Twitter that we think that Bridge is a horses for courses kind of pick. A bit surprised that Sever Reese has been left out of this one. But you think that's a kicking issue, or not, or receiving kicking issue?
Yeah, and I think as fans, I think we all like this idea of having a first choice 15, and if the World Cup final was tomorrow, like who would be the team? If everyone was fit and available. And I just don't think it works that way anymore. It's dependent on opposition and dependent on the style of game expected. I think that dictates selection in particular positions. And I think particularly with South Africa, we're going to expect lots of box kicking. We're going to expect lots of high balls. And it's been this way for a while now, going back to, Graham Henry's tenure, is that the All Blacks like picking guys, or like picking at least one winger who's got fullback skills. So, the days of Corey Jane shifting to the wing, Israel Dagg, Geordie Barrett playing on the wing, and now we've got both George Bridge and Will Jordan, who are strong under the high ball. And I think that's just a case of what they're going to expect from South Africa. Lots of high balls, lots of pressure with kick chase. So pick the guys that are well equipped to deal with it.
Yeah, I can see Will Jordan being the kind of the modern Corey Jane, who's in that jersey for a long time. I don't think Geordie's quite got the pace for a wing. I'm not as comfortable with him on the wing as I am at fullback on that one. I guess one of the things I thought they might do is use Geordie as the the centre cover. But seeing Quintapaya rather than Sever Reese on the bench there shows that I don't think they like, or they don't see Geordie as a centre cover at the moment, and hence that's why Quinn's ahead of Sevu on the bench. Is my reading of it. The other one, I guess, there's two other pecking order things. Samasoni ahead of I've gone blank. Dear me, the Wellington hooker.
Almoa,
thank you. So that's Samasoni's had a great season. Doesn't need to climb above Amua there in that position. And then I guess on the flip side, Patrick managing to see off the eyes challenge for that third place lock position. I guess those are the two pecking orders I think we've been we've seen here, because this is definitely the first choice side of who's available.
Do you think Hoskins Sotutu, he was obviously a bit of a darling in 2020, and do you think he has been unlucky to be, missing out on even a bench spot?
I think there's a little bit of versatility cover with Blackadder. Sotutu, from what we've seen, is just an out-and-out number 8, right? Yep. So, if he's there, is that versatility? But I fully expect that we'll see him in the second test against South Africa. I think there'll be rotation there, and I think there's still that opportunity for someone to stake the claim to the 8 jersey. It's a hard question, because we're always so blessed with depth, and there's always going to be guys that are unlucky to miss out. And unfortunately, the coaching staff and the selectors are always so coy with their picks, and there's not a lot of transparency around why. So we end up
transparency,
which is great for shows like us, where you come on and you speculate and you discuss, and it's like, well, why do you think this is the case? And we might be right, but we might be a million miles away, and who knows? So
I'll be surprised if Sotutu gets in the matchday squad for the second game against the Springboks, whatever the result, with the USA up next, followed by Wales, Italy, Ireland, and France. I think that USA game and the Italy game is where players like him, who are last on the list, within the squad. I mean, he's obviously clearly ahead of. I've gone blank as the Highlanders number 8 because he's actually in the squad. But I think the real fringe players in this squad will get their opportunity against the USA and Italy rather than necessarily a second Springboks game.
I think the other thing too is that it's quite easy for a guy to shine out in a dominant performance like last week. So, Tupou Vaa'i had an outstanding game, but it's a little bit easier to, and I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but it's a little bit easier to shine when the game's a bit loose and, you bag a try hanging out in the wing kind of thing, and all of a sudden you've got a double. And we don't expect that from the Springboks. We expect that this game's going to be tighter. It's going to be physical. They're not going to be as bad as they were last week when they were downright awful.
Yeah.
So, it's a no-brainer for me to go with Patrick Tuipulotu, who's proven himself at this level for a significant amount of time as the third or fourth string lock, rather than Tupou Vaa'i, who's very green, very raw, and ideally suited to games that are a little bit looser and a little bit freer.
And he's only got another decade of rugby ahead of him, so it's not like he better rush and get his caps now.
That's a pretty good team. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, it's good. I think if it'd be different if we had our first choice selections. I personally wouldn't have been surprised if Richie Mo'unga was starting and Bodie was at 15. If we'd actually have Severis playing as starting, just because you don't agree. I think they like that combination. But tell us more, Paul.
I can't see Bodie at 15 again. I think Bodie's made it very, very clear he wants to be that. He wants that 10 jersey.
I can't see a month and a half ago he was at 15 against Australia, wasn't he? In New Zealand. Is that right? Was it Richie at 10, Bodie at 15 in August against Australia? So look, so next week I wouldn't be surprised if it's. Do you think Richie will start next week?
D-Mac played both the home tests against Australia at 15.
Okay, look, I'm mistaken. No, Bodie wasn't injured, was he? Do you think Richie will start next week at 10, or do you think it depends on the result? Or do you think he'll come off the bench because of his inactivity?
I can't see him starting.
Okay. He
might be on the bench, but he might be or just left out entirely, depending on. I think it probably comes down to how fit Bowden's calf is.
Yeah. Okay. But I do think that they do like I personally think, and I'd love to hear you guys take on this. If Richie was in there, there's more chance that Sevu would be in the team, would be in the starting 15 or 23, just because I think they like that combo. Now against South Africa, I understand that they require, they're going to go for a slightly taller player. It's a bit better under the high wall, but I think attacking pairs, I do think that Severis and Richard Mo'unga have done so well, and the All Blacks have kind of carried that through in a few of the cases in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I think the other thing we maybe haven't kind of looked at is the midfield makeup with Leonard Brown out. Because if he's fit, does he come in at centre, and then where is Rico involved? So, there's another option on the wing as well. And again, we're so lucky with the depth we've got in midfield and outside backs. Particularly with the form that Havili's been in. And, probably only 24 months ago, we're looking at midfield as not quite as strong. And, everyone wanted Laumapi in there, and Goodhue and Leonard Brown weren't quite working as a 12-13. Now it's like, well, our 12 is set. Like, Havili's playing out of his skin. We've got these options at centre, and we've got these options at wing. So, yeah, it's a real hard question to answer. And whether they look to combinations or not, I'm not 100% sure, and unfortunately, as I said before, we just don't get that transparency from the selection panel. So it'll be interesting to see the selection next week, and And I'm sure there will be, Paul disagreed earlier, but I think there'll be rotation again because the Rugby Championship is probably locked up. We've got these tests still to come. It's a long tour, and I think they are going to look to manage minutes as best they can across the rest of the year.
Oh, look, I think there's rotation, but I don't think we'll see the same level of rotation we saw between the two Argentina games, where we saw 13 players change. So I think we'll see a few, but not. I don't think we'll see a pure B string rolled out in the same way that we saw against Argentina. But yeah, there will be some rotation, but not. I don't think to that level.
And it'll possibly depend on the result as well.
And also, the result also matters. If we lose, then you have to roll out your first choice.
Yeah.
The other question is, are Sevi Reece and Dave McKenzie the first choice wing and fullback against non-kick teams or against non-competitive kick teams? And then, as you say, the horses for courses is that Bridge and Geordie come in when you're going to have people jumping at you on that side of things. We have well overrun, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Any sort of final thoughts from the general rugby world? That anything from you guys?
Ryan, you first, mate.
No, I'm good. No,
you're good.
We've covered everything. Yeah.
One question for the two of you, because obviously I'm a kind of fresh-faced All Blacks kind of fan, relatively speaking, having only moved over here in 2014. You guys then, favourite Springbok All Blacks memory? Since we're talking about the 100th game this weekend, do you have a favourite memory from Springboks and All Blacks clashes? I was trying to stretch it out there to give you some time to think.
I'm thinking. No, good one.
I think. I'll go for the Israel Dag match winner in South Africa, which I can't even remember what year it was. There's a bit of a story behind this. Is that I had a referee's prize giving, and we got on it pretty large, and then I went home, stayed at one of my referee mates' places, and we were all set to watch this test, and we just passed out before it kicked off because it's like 3 a.m. 3 a.m. We're absolutely hammered, and then wake up the next morning and find that we've missed an absolute classic test match, and it was just like find a replay, and it was just a crazy test. The Martin Onu break where he lost his boot, and then Dag celebrating before he put the ball down. But that's just one of many. Like, there's been so many great All Black Springboks tests, and that one just for the sheer drama and I guess the personal backstory kind of makes it.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like my attempted New Year's Eve celebrations in Cardiff, where we started drinking at lunchtime and all passed out well before midnight.
Look, is it which year did you say that was, Ryan?
We're not sure. We can't remember now.
Not sure. I'd have to.
Because I think that the 2013 one, the 2013 match, which was that kind of game of the decade or whatever they cared. I think it was the one that Nigel Owens was refereeing. Was an amazing match. Might have been the one that you were coming out through, Ryan.
2012 was my one.
Gotcha.
Google shows me. Yeah.
So the one where it was obviously it was a close match in South Africa. It was an absolutely blockbuster game. So we're talking about recent times. It was a great one. Loved the 2015 World Cup one. I was very tense. We were talking to who's a guy, John, and he was saying about how the All Blacks had it sewn up the whole game, and I felt very differently about that during the game. The first rugby match that I have significant memories of is the 1995 World Cup final.
I was going to say, don't try and you're not that young, boy.
Yeah, that's how new I am to the game. 1995. I do actually remember the France tour in like 93 or something, but that one. So I remember that one. But yeah, I'd say
95 World Cup.
I remember the losses. So I remember 1999 fucking third match game, which was really disappointing to lose, actually, and surprisingly for a third match game at a World Cup. And then I obviously remember the 2009 losing 3 on the trot and just being furious about the whole thing. And then obviously the 2013 match was a brilliant one, because to be fair, in the last 10 years, Heineke Meyer and Alistair Coetzee, we kind of gave them a hiding. It wasn't very often that they actually were great, but they had a couple of competitive moments. Heineke Meyer's team won one game, I think, in 2014 or something, but the 2013 game was a real blockbuster. So that's probably the greatest memory I have of a match being both high in quality and competitive. So I think it's 2013. Might be 12.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are pointing out, taking screenshots of Wikipedia from 2010 onwards, where South Africa have won 3 games and 1 draw since 2010.
Yep.
They are, as you say, cutting it just short there, because obviously those 3 South Africa wins in 2009.
Yeah, changed a lot. Which when you think about the what's happened in the succeeding 10 years, is a massive achievement, because I think even New Zealand going to South Africa, playing 3 games against South Africa, 2 of them in South Africa, it would be a pretty good effort to win 3. And so what they did was amazing. On the back of a Lions tour, which was the key thing. Battle hardened, they were ready, they were up for it. They'd also won a World Cup. So it's extremely similar circumstances this time round. And it's actually kind of a shame that they lost those 2 matches, because if they didn't lose those 2 matches against Australia, they'd be the favourites. Well, they should.
Yeah, I think the difference this time is the fact that they've been in lockdown for about 13 weeks.
Yeah, a bit of a bubble.
And I think that's really has played on. Well, thank you for those thoughts. I hope you enjoyed our lockdown beers, folks. I'll be back again tomorrow at 5 p.m. We're going to skip Saturday and Sunday, because I will be at the Farah Palmer Cup Bay of Plenty versus Wellington on Saturday, and at Bay of Plenty versus Taranaki on Sunday in the NPC. So I'm not available for the 5 o'clock shows, but we'll kick them off again next week. Don't forget post-match reaction to both the All Blacks versus Springboks and the Wallabies versus Pumas on Saturday night as well. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Con.
Cheers, Paul.
All good. See you.